No country, however powerful, can impose its will on all issues. Not just that, it also means now that there is a natural competition among nations in the world and that it creates its own balance. The very idea of power, that it has so many definitions of trade, of energy, of military, of resources, of technology, of talent, it makes this a particularly complex phenomenon. It is also essential to recognize that that global powers are no longer capable of being universal. We see that in the selectivity of issues and the prioritization of agenda. In fact, the trend in many quarters is towards being much more self-centered than before.
At the Munich Security Conference, a clear signal has emerged. The old world order is fading, and a new balance of power is taking shape. Finland's President Alexander Stubb has said that the Global South will decide the next world order.
So then we have to ask ourselves the question, for demographic reasons, for economic reasons, for geopolitical reasons, it's going to be the Global South that decides the next world order.
His remarks came just a day after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio made a striking admission. Rubio said the old world is gone.
The world is changing very fast right in front of us. The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era of geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be. And we've had many of these conversations in private with many of our allies. We are our allies, and we need to continue to have those conversations. And I think Saturday, hopefully, in the meetings we'll have there, we'll move to them.
From India's perspective, this is not surprising. For years, New Delhi has argued that the global system must reflect new realities. India has consistently pushed for a multipolar world, a world where no single nation dominates every issue, a world where emerging powers have a stronger voice. External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar has made this clear in recent speeches. He has said the old order is nearly dead. He has warned that no country, however powerful, can impose its will on all others anymore. According to him, power today is more complex. It is not just about military strength. It is about trade, technology, energy, resources, talent.
The world was simply a more distant place, one much harder to relate with. Depending on what one did, it was an object of curiosity and in some cases perhaps of compulsion. But it was rarely perceived as an opportunity. Now, let's fast forward a few decades and come to the present. Where the world is concerned, asserting today a definitive picture is obviously a real problem because so much of it is in transition. But the global order established 80 years ago is clearly unraveling. There are multiple and complex reasons for that. Naturally, we attribute it to the politics and policies of individual nations, especially large ones. However, they themselves are actually reacting to trends that may even be of their own making. The global order has now reached a point where rebalancing is creating multipolarity. A number of centers of power and influence have emerged. No country, however powerful, can impose its will on all issues. Not just that, it also means now that there is a natural competition among nations in the world and that it creates its own balance. The very idea of power, that it has so many definitions of trade, of energy, of military, of resources, of technology, of talent, it makes this a particularly complex phenomenon. It is also essential to recognize that that global powers are no longer capable of being universal. We see that in the selectivity of issues and the prioritization of agenda. In fact, the trend in many quarters is towards being much more self-centered than before. So as we saw during the COVID pandemic, the generosity of India is not necessarily shared by others. There are some particular features of the world politics today that also bear appreciation. Policies are increasingly national, maybe even regional, and the global commons often suffers neglect. Globalization itself is in political retreat, even if its economic dimensions remain deeply entrenched. In many parts of the world, historical causes and historical concerns are being revived. The propensity to take risks is very much higher. All in all, we are much more complex, volatile and uncertain international situation. I stress this not only to make you more aware of the challenges in the world, but also so that you fully appreciate the stability and the progress at home. Indian foreign policy in such a context understandably strives for optimal positioning. We seek to maximize the freedom of choice. We also strive to maintain the autonomy of decision making. This means working with major nations and regions on agreed agendas, but in combinations that suit our national interest. Like any other nations, our priorities start with the immediate neighborhood, where we proof against volatility by deepening cooperation, contacts and communication. Expressed as neighborhood first, it is then buttressed by a further set of policies that focus on the Gulf, on Southeast Asia, on Central Asia and the Indian Ocean.